We are on cycle 1. For cycle 1, we are going to be reading pages 23 to 24. So the materials you will need something to take notes with. You will also need to open up that PDF of the book and get to page 23. Resume this video when you are ready. Alright, let's start reading on page 23. This chapter is called Spitting Image. There's a place I go inside my head sometimes. It's cool and dim in there, and you float like a cloud. No, you are a cloud. The kind you see in the sky on a windy day. The way they keep changing the shape, except you can't really see it changing. It just sort of happens. And suddenly you realize the cloud that looks like a big hand with fat fingers now looks like a catcher's mitt. Or a big soft TV set? Like that. Anyhow, I went there right after Fair Gwen ran off with with that look on her face, like what was he doing with my poor little baby, stealing him away in the wagon? What I do is lie on the floor underneath my bed, where you can just barely see the bed springs and stuff because it's so dark. And before long I'm somewhere else, sort of floating, and it's so cool and empty on there. You don't have to think about anything. You're nothing. You're nobody. Nothing matters. You're not even there. Time out. Except this time I can't stay as long as I'd like because Graham is knocking on the door, going, Maxwell, Maxwell, are you there? Please answer me, dear. It's important. Yeah, right. But I wedge out from under the bed because uh, there's getting to be less and less room under there, and I dust myself off and open the door. There's no lock, but Graham has this thing about waiting until I say come in. She makes a big deal about not intruding. Maxwell, she says, and she takes a little step inside the room, and you can tell she'd rather not be here. She makes this face because the place is dark and messy, and probably it smells like my socks or whatever. Max, dear, I'm sorry to bother you. You know I never come into the basement, but I just got a call from Gwen Avery, and I think it's important. Uh-oh, I'm thinking. Now the fair Gwen is calling up my Graham, probably to report a great hulking beast that lives in the cellar, and I close up inside, waiting for the worst. We're going to pause right there and look at our questions. So this line that we just read, now the fair Gwen is calling up my Graham, probably to report a great hulking beast that lives in the cellar. How might the meaning of that line change if we switched hulking beast to scuttling creature? So if the line said, now the fair Gwen is calling up my Graham, probably to report a scuttling creature that lives in the cellar. How does that change the meaning? Tell me on that line. Pause the video to answer that question. All right, our second question is, how does the verb report contribute to the meaning you noticed above? So probably to report a great hulking beast. How does that affect the meaning? Pause the video to answer that question. Now that you're done with cycle 1, move on to cycle 2.